So Kelly and Stacey are from 7 South Street Treatment Center up in Aurelia. 7 South Treatment Center is a long-term nonprofit residential facility in Aurelia. They are offering 24/7 supervised evidence-based addiction treatment. They were established in 1972, so they've been in the community for quite a while, and they house about 20 clients at a time. They do also have in their two residents, one is specific to parole specific facility, and then they have a secondary facility as well. And it's fully staffed by counselors that plays a vital role in the continuum of care in Ontario. So I'm going to introduce Kelly first, and then Stacey, and then we're going to dive into it. So Kelly is the director of clinical services at 7 South Street. She comes with over 20 years of experience in addiction counseling and mental health. Starting as a frontline counselor, she developed deep expertise in evidence-based care and the complexities of addiction. Kelly leads a clinical team overseeing treatment planning, program development, and implementation of innovative therapeutic approaches. She's committed to an individualized, holistic care that addresses mental, physical, and emotional well-being. She is known within the organization and in the broader community for her collaborative leadership and dedication to improving outcomes. I'm just going to move my computer slightly, and you will notice that my camera does follow me. So if it's zooming in and out, it's because I adjust my seating slightly and I don't know how to turn it off. As we start to introduce Stacey, Stacey is a seasoned professional with over 30 years in the addictions space, specifically at 7 South Street. She has a background in accounting, and she provides a lot of financial oversight and has later expanded into a leadership role that combines clinical insight with strategic guidance to the organization. She is known for her empathetic approach and strong organizational skills. Stacey bridges financial management and compassionate care effectively. She works closely with both the clients and the staff to advocate a holistic approach to recovery and equally values structure, support, and personal empowerment. Her career reflects a deep passion for helping individuals overcome substance use disorders and to rebuild their lives through transformative treatment. So thank you both for joining me, for carving out some time today. I know you guys have so much going on, but welcome to the call.
Thank you for having us.
So we're going to dive in. We know that there's been a lot of changes for you as an organization. You made a lot of investments over the last year, both on the strategic priority side, the community engagement and outreach, as well as on the technology side to enable your teams. So can you walk us through some of that strategic planning process you went through last year? You created a new vision and mission statements. What was involved in that? Who did you involve? And what were your values and experience that shaped the discussions that you had?
Well, when Kelly and I took a co-director role about a year and a half ago, one of the things we realized was that we did not have an official strategic plan laid out. And so with the help of community partners and a consultant and our board of directors, we established a strategic plan. It's really hard to know where you're going if you don't have set goals in mind.
Absolutely.
As well, we looked at our mission statement, and although we had one, it wasn't as fulsome as we wanted it to be. So we embarked on changing that as well. I absolutely love our new vision, which is empowering men and rebuilding lives. I think it speaks perfectly to what we do and who we help. Our mission really encompasses everything that we do, and it's providing residential treatment and support for individuals choosing recovery, personal growth, and community reintegration. I think it captures everyone that we help and people that we can help in the future.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I definitely want to pull on that thread later, knowing that you are a men's only facility.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of stigma, especially over the last few years, when you look at some of the movements that have happened globally. So I think there's definitely a lot of things as you own that as, yes, we are men's only. We know the impact that has on the community, and we want to make sure we're super targeted in that front. As you start to take the mission and vision and weave that through your decision-making process and how you communicate, how you operate internally, how you interact with the broader community, how have you found taking that and kind of always keeping that in the forefront. So you have that North Star in everything you do to make sure people are feeling the consistent application of it.
Well, I think, when we think about men's care, it's always about us being client-centered. So everything we do, every decision we make, every time we go out in the community, it's all about what's best for the clients that we serve. So when we think about empowering men, um, knowing that there's a lot of stigma around men and men's mental health, and we realize that at the background of everything, men have typically been taught to not be vulnerable, to not show emotion, to be strong and have kind of that old definition of what strength actually means. So it's really important for us in our mission statement to kind of redefine what that means, and that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to be vulnerable in the sense of allowing other people in to kind of support men in their changes and to be able to become the best versions of themselves, and that mental health affects everybody. It's not gender specific, and it's okay to not, and I know this is cliche, but it's okay not to be okay, and to ask for help to get better. So I think that really drives us in everything that we do, and it's always centered around men's care and men's health, emotionally, spiritually, physically.
Yeah, I think that's a, a really interesting kind of it's very lonely
It is.
when
Oh,
there's that sense of stigma and there's a loneliness to it that I can't own that these are the challenges I have. And it's hard to ask for help because you're supposed to be stoic and you're supposed to not have these challenges and you just push through and you just bottle it up and deal with it at a different time. And that manifests itself in a lot of ways through physical health, through your mental health, through how you interact with the people around you. And as you went through this journey, like this was 2024 that you did this overhaul on your strategic strategy. And you made a lot of changes last year because you also joined the EMHWare community at the same time. If you think about the kind of pre-COVID, like I want to use and kind of anchor, and I think COVID was quite transformational for society as a whole. There are times where I look back and with my family, I'm like, I kind of miss like the not having a million things on the go and like trying to get four kids to a whole bunch of places. But there's also a lot of things where I'm glad it's over. And kind of thinking back to the news stories when COVID first started and the shutdowns happened and you started to see poverty in the streets. There was nobody else in the streets. You saw these invisible populations, and I want to say invisible in quotation marks because they are part of our communities, the unhoused population. You start to see like they are the only people that are out on the streets right now. And now you have everybody in their house where there is nowhere to go. So you are now in this kind of like there's no escaping being around toxic relationships, being around places where you don't have the same outlets and supports that you previously did. And now we're starting to talk about this epidemic of loneliness. And to tie that back in, especially to men's mental health, there already was an epidemic of loneliness, of shallow relationships, lack of support systems because we're we don't need that. We're totally fine. Like we'll figure it out on our own. We'll just bottle it up and it'll just manage on its own. So as you see the differences kind of um pre and post, how has that impacted how people have viewed you in the community as you have mentioned earlier on about the community engagement strategy?
well, I think you brought up a very interesting point, Sam, is that COVID was a very bittersweet time. And COVID really, I think it could have very much contributed to a lot of the problems that are going on with addiction and mental health, absolutely. But I think what it really did was put a spotlight on the problem that's been happening well before COVID. And one of them is, yes, the epidemic of loneliness of men and men's mental health and men's addiction. And as you pointed out, those empty streets being actually filled with those that are unhoused. And I think it forced everybody to stop because all the busyness is done, right? You're
Hmm.
not rushing, you're not getting to work, you're not involved in so many things. You're forced to see what's been right under our noses for a lifetime. And it just really put a spotlight on the fact that there is a lot of people out there that are suffering. And when you remove the busyness, you can really see what's happening. And even, there's also the functioning addicts and alcoholics, the ones that are out working and busy and taking care of their family and paying their bills. But when you took all that external stuff away, they were faced with looking at what's actually going on and how much they're struggling. So, in a way, COVID helped in the sense that it made people very aware of how big of a problem this really is. And I'd like to think, with some of the acceptance that we've been seeing, that people are seeing past the addiction and actually seeing the person, because there's a person behind all those behaviors. And I think that's one of the most important things that people are starting to see. That stigma that's attached to addiction is slowly starting to kind of, it's getting more positive. People are starting to actually see that there's a person behind that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of scary, but also liberating when you think about all the masks each one of us wears during our day. And when you're cooped up at home with nowhere to go, you lose a lot of those masks.
You do.
And you have to see who am I actually, and start to work through that. So I think that's poignant for me as I think through. I'm like there was a lot that you kind of don't remember as you look back. And some people have been able to leave it in the past, and some people have not. And I think with a lot of the people that are also on this call, like we work with the people that have not been able to leave it in the past. And they continue, and this is their everyday that they need to work through it. And so as you mentioned on the community engagement piece, with there's starting to be less stigma. People are talking about it more. Like, what does your community engagement look like with in the community? Like, how are you actually getting out there? How do you let people know where you are in the community? The services you're doing, kind of walk me through that a bit.
Well, one of Stacey's famous lines, which I completely agree with, is that we have been Aurelia's best kept secret for a very, very long time. Because when you think back in the 70s, we had to be very much in the shadows because of the
Mm,
not in my backyard type of mentality. The ideas and stigmas around people with addiction and mental health were really kind of pulled from either people's personal experiences or from the movies, right? So you had to hide. Now, as we kind of move through this and people are starting to see addiction and mental health as a symptom of a greater problem and not the problem itself, we're allowed to actually come out of those shadows, and we can actually say, and very proudly say, we're here. And this is the services, and it's okay to call, and it's okay to knock on the door. You don't have to hide any more than we have to hide anymore. So, but it is also a very fragile line, because
mhm,
we need to keep our environment for the guys that are here safe. They need their privacy. They're here to heal. They're here to be vulnerable. And this, for many of them, is their first courageous attempt of doing that. So it's not like we can swing our doors open, invite everybody in to come see what we're about, because this is their home and we need to keep that for them. So Stacey and I will go out. We'll go out of house, and we are going to start getting more and more loud of this is what we are, because we are very proud of what we do. And for
mhm.
the most part, community is very receptive. A lot of them are like, I didn't even know we had this in our community. I didn't even know this is down the street from us, right? So it's really kind of a positive experience. Organizations that are like-minded are starting to work together. So the continuum of care can be a lot more graceful for the people that are struggling to get help. So I think it's a very positive experience, and one that we're going to continue getting out there and screaming at the rooftops that we are here.
That's super helpful. And you kind of mentioned the NIMBYism that there was of decades past.
Yes.
Um, and in kind of my community, the next community over, like we see a lot of NIMBYism still,
Yes.
and I'm in Toronto. Um, especially around safe injection sites, close to schools, and there's obviously changes in legislation that have been happening more recently. When have there been challenges of making it more, making the community more aware that you are pretty close to downtown? You're not kind of in a rural setting. You're in a city setting. Um, are there people that are kind of still maintaining that NIMBY approach of not in my backyard, like you're making it unsafe for my kids to walk to school because you're in inpatient treatment and it's not a secure facility where it's all locked down and big fences and all of those things.
I
I
think that
think,
comes, oh, sorry,
well,
Stacy.
I'm just gonna say, we do run into neighbors who, won't walk past the house for fear of what's inside. We have started to invite them in to say, come and be educated on what we do. There's no need to be fearful. Once you explain to them that we do have 24-hour staffing, that there's all those
Mhm.
sort of protocols in place, I think the community that we reside in, our neighborhood, is more accepting. So I think a lot of it has to revolve around the education piece and make sure people don't, like Kelly said, get their ideas from movies, that they actually get educated on what is being done in the building and who is actually coming in, and, that we do, um, assess them and make sure that they are, proper for our organization and that they can get the help they need here. So I think that helps.
Yeah, it's the extra effort on the education piece, right? Where you don't necessarily feel like you have to be the ones educating. It's like
Yeah.
people should do some of their own research, but
Mm.
it is that extra piece that will bring the community in. And I know that you had mentioned that kind of privacy for the people that are coming into your facilities is paramount. And so as you now have people from the community being invited in to learn more about the operation and making them feel good that that them as a community can be welcoming and help reduce some of that loneliness and stigma themselves. And also having new intakes coming in where people still aren't really sure or their families aren't sure as they're reaching out. Walk me through how you've built some of your policies to be able to support and maintain the privacy of the people that are on site.
I think it's always about the client comes first. So of course, there's all the confidentiality laws, which we hold very, very near and dear to our heart. But everything is about the betterment of the client. Every choice we make, every decision we make, every opportunity we take is the betterment of them. So we maintain a small house for a reason, because we want to be able to have the time dedicated to all the guys here, but we also have more control of being able to take care of their privacy and their safety as well. So right from the very first phone call till the very day that they graduate, we will always make sure that every decision is based off of how they can grow and succeed in recovery. And we do everything in our power not to let anything kind of jeopardize their ability to have that kind of safe space.
Mhm.
And all the staff are on the same kind of plane with that, to make sure that the clients are well taken care of that way.
Yeah, it's such a fine balancing act, right?
It is.
Like you want to be open, but you can't be open at the same time.
You want to be
Competing of
transparent, right? Because people do, they need to understand what's happening, but not at the expense of somebody's growth.
Mhm.
There
Sure.
is a way of saying this is what's happening without needing to drag them in the forefront of it.
Yeah, and kind of like the just to kind of pull on the your building community in your community in the more traditional sense, you're getting them to feel more comfortable with the organization. Hopefully, if they know people that are in need, they're saying, you know what, there was a really great organization nearby. And then you also have community with how do you make people feel less alone when they're going through treatment and getting the help they need. So focusing on that second one this time. So instead of on the community outreach and making your presence more known, um, when we think about that loneliness epidemic, especially men, not that it is not impacting everybody, because I think you see it a lot in children and teens right now, where they're stuck to their devices and lacking the ability to have conflict and also interact with the broader world around them. Um, how do you make the people that are coming in? Because you're if I'd assume you're not just doing big cohorts where it's like, okay, day one, we're bringing 15 people in, we're bringing 20 people into this house, we're bringing five in over here, or 15 and five. Um, how do you start to foster that community so that people don't feel so alone through the process and they leave with that support system of people that just get it and understand them?
It actually starts with the very first phone call, because like there's a saying that the telephone can sometimes weigh 1,000 pounds when you're needing to ask for help. And we understand that. So the very worst thing that can happen to anyone looking for help is they get an answering service, or they get a
Mm.
press one to talk to. And we refuse to have that. Our phones will never have a voice message. Our phones will always have a voice. There will always be a live person that picks up the phone and is there to talk to the person day or night, 24 hours a day. So that first phone call, when they're actually collected that courage to be able to pick up that phone and say, I need help, that's where our relationship starts to be established. They're able to start telling little pieces of their story. And we just simply listen, which is something that a lot of these guys do not experience much of. They're
Mhm.
usually instantly judged and discounted. So to be able to give just that moment of time of tell me what's going on and how can I help? And immediately follow that up with how about we set some time aside so you can tell me more of your story. And so they have that time to build up before they even walk through these doors. But when they do walk through these doors, because we do continuous intake, so like you said, it's not like 20 of them coming in all at the same time. They are usually met with all the other residents, sporadically through the house, shaking their hand, slapping them on the back, saying, I'm glad you're here. And if you need anything, I understand. So that instant connection that there's people that get me and I
Mhm.
actually belong starts to build every single day. And hopefully, if it works for them, that foundation just continues to grow.
Yeah, I think that's it. The constant building of the relationship, knowing it's like you might not get a first name on the first call.
Yeah.
Like it's quite possible that you're getting an anonymous person calling in. And when you think about how I'm gonna put my hand up. I'm like, no, nobody judge me on this one. Like men are really good at hearing a problem, being like, we can solve it.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna flat out tell you how to solve your addiction problem. Like, don't worry, don't worry. Just stop doing it. Just like there you go. Cured. So I think like that empowerment piece of getting them to define what they're hoping for and what their challenges are, rather than just telling them like, this is the program, do you want to come in or not?
Exactly.
Like that's amazing. And it takes more time, but I can only imagine if you had like a research team come in and do a longitudinal analysis that they would be like, yeah, like taking that extra hour or two up front actually increases and improves the health outcomes on the back end
Yeah.
and how people are going to be able to manage through in the future because it's not going away.
Well, it's not going to go away. That's the thing. And it's important sometimes that first phone call might not result in them actually calling back for another month or two. But if they had a positive experience, non-judgmental positive experience with that first phone call, you've planted the seed that
Mhm.
maybe they'll be able to pick up a phone a second time. So it's just about getting people to stay alive long enough where they can start saving their own life.
And as you like, if you have someone that might not have given you their first name, might not have given you any information. You were previously using paper. So everything
Okay.
was on paper. You put a little bit of stuff into the Catalyst system
Mhm.
for the reporting requirements, but most of what you did in note taking was on paper. How would you have handled that in the past and before EMH were and what does that impact now that you have software to support you in that?
I see
I,
you
yeah,
smile. She struggled with this.
yeah. So I was the pre-EMH wear intake coordinator. And so it was a nightmare. You would have 16 pieces of paper, hopefully stapled together for follow-up of every single call that you got from a client. It was in a filing cabinet. So I spent an awful lot of time, okay, it's Bob Smith calling, so you'd have to find his last one before you could actually take the call. EMH where I'll turn it over to Kelly, but it has just been a saving of both time and organization. It's, yeah.
Really is, because you just type in the person's name, you see the last time they had contact, what that conversation was. So they don't have to repeat themselves. They don't, and that again develops trust. Oh my God, you know who I am, you know what my story is. I don't have, they instantly feel heard and appreciated right off the hop, just because you can simply say, oh yes, you're from Barrie, and be able to kind of pull that information from EMHware. And it's just another way to establish relationship, keep organized, and to be able to just carry on with their story without having to get the same information you may have got a month or 6 months ago.
Yeah, I think that's so important on the how does someone not tell their story 10 times to every
Mhm.
single person, right? It's like, oh my gosh, like again, I'm starting from scratch. And you think about going to your primary care provider and you're like you, I know you have a system.
Mhm.
I know because I booked in it. It wasn't an easy booking experience, but I booked in it.
Yep.
And you're asking me again about the same thing. So I think there's a ton of value there. And Stacey, so we I've chatted with Kelly and Stacey before and built a relationship through with them through the implementation process. But Stacey mentioned something really interesting about when you were paper based and there was on calls. Like, can you walk us through what life was like when you were on call and there could have been a crisis in off hours?
Yeah, I would literally have to get in my car and I would have to come back to the facility, pull the file, look the information up, and sort of support the staff on duty at the time. Now I can access that same information from home and I can, troubleshoot or talk them through whatever situation the client or the staff may be going through. So just even logistically, it's just so much quicker.
Yeah, I like never would have thought that someone would have to drive for
Yeah,
just bring the keys.
exactly. Bring
It's
the
like,
keys. And because it's protected information, a lot of the time, you would have the levels I would have access to, the person on duty wouldn't.
yeah,
So now within the same system, they can access certain levels. If they need further, they can call me or Kelly and we can have access to that from home, from the cottage, wherever we happen to be. So it's fantastic.
yeah, that's a really good call out on the privacy permissions of I might
Mhm.
be able to see Bob Smith, but I shouldn't be able to see Sam Roworth
That's
and
right.
that information. And
Mhm.
that's all kind of achievable with having a system that you would have had to have color coded filing cabinets, I would guess, based
A
on
separate filing
marker or
cabinet.
something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's a space savings too.
Yeah, and then just hope that people didn't go in because you don't have an audit system when it's paper,
Yeah.
Mhm.
who's viewed things. So
Mhm.
I just remember that stuck out when we were originally chatting, being like, wouldn't have thought about getting like called at 3 in the morning and having to drive back
Yeah,
to work.
that was great times. Yeah.
And like you just hope that like I hope my bathrobe is like in good enough
Yeah,
shape to be able to walk into
exactly.
the facility
Yeah,
and that people don't
yeah.
judge my bunny slippers.
That's right on my bed head. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can get a
yeah,
cap. She's
yes.
Stacey's gonna show up in her cap each time.
Yeah.
Um, kind of pulling on that thread still. You said people can now access the information they need when they need it,
Mhm.
and not the information they shouldn't be able to access. When you think, Stacey, like I know you're big on the reporting side, on the financial side.
Mhm.
What does your life look like now after moving from paper? And
Mhm.
I'm in my head, I'm like either have an abacus or a tally system or something just to help
Yeah.
with some of the tracking to now being able to run a report that's pre-formatted based on the ministry specifications and those components of it.
It honestly, like, it sounds very dramatic to say it's life changing, but it really is because I would have had a tally system. So I had a clipboard every time somebody called in, give them a tick. At the end of a quarter, sit down, add all the ticks up. Now it's going to EMH where run the report, print it out. There's everything you need, not for just that one specific requirement, but for all of them. Uh,
Mhm.
I was literally just working on that this morning, and it was I just laugh. It just makes me happy because I'm like, what am I going to do with the extra hour I now have? Like I can take a lunch. This is fantastic. Yeah, and I know for people they may think, oh, as if it's that significant, but it is. It really, really is for me and our organization. We had a paper pandemic going on here. It was ridiculous. So now UMH where it's just sucked all that paper in and it's awesome. Yeah, the trees are thanking us.
And you haven't even hit a full first year. So you
No,
onboarded
no,
last June, mid-June, I
right.
want to say.
Yeah,
January.
Yeah.
So now
So,
you're like starting as of April 1, like this is your first full year that you won't even have to refer back to your checklists.
right.
Like I'm not sure if you guys realize that, but like so you're like, oh, now it's gonna be even better than it was before.
Yeah.
You would have just been quarter the most recent quarter for the report, and if someone is in and out of service, it's gonna change some of your accounts.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's awesome. Like I just can't, yeah. This is not a paid for commercial. Like I just really
yeah.
truly believe it. Yeah.
It's one of the interesting ones where like the report pulling is,
Yeah.
is usually a lot of people like light up about, and then I'm like, those are my people because I'm a little bit nerdy on a lot of things. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
reporting the data
Yeah.
stuff. Like, I know I'm gonna always get along with Stacey
Yeah.
on on that front.
Yeah.
Um, when we think about, and then I know there is one question that's in the Q&A, so we're going to get to it in pretty soon, actually. When you think about the implementation, you're just telling me you don't get lunch, and I think that's very common at most agencies.
Mhm.
I'd say anyone that's getting lunch, like that is because they get hangry and everyone is forcing them to take lunch.
Yes.
Like as
Mhm.
I was munching on my granola bar before we started,
Mhm.
um, my wife might force me to take lunch sometimes. Um, what was the impact of like you moved on to an entirely new system that touches every single process in your organization? Impacts how you do intake, it impacts how you're going to do discharges, how you look for data, everything. How how was the implementation process with your regular workload? Because I know that you two ran the project. There wasn't some consultant that came in to do that lift. Like, walk me through what the impact was and um, some of the challenges you had and some of the parts that might have been surprising in how they went.
I'm not gonna lie, when we started at the very, very beginning of this and we signed up, I was scared. I was overwhelmed. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I don't know how to even begin. But I was lucky enough to be able to work with you, Sam, to get all of this, ready for us. And it was so much easier than I had ever imagined getting it from beginning to end, where we were training all the staff. And just to do things one thing at a time and everything started coming together. I don't know what magic you guys did in the background, but as I was sending in the information, things were popping up on the screen. I'm like, this is absolutely amazing. And Stacey and I, we were just so excited seeing this being developed before our eyes. And then before we knew it, we were into the training sessions with the rest of the staff. And I still, almost a year later, am still getting the counselors coming to me and other staff members coming to me, thanking me and Stacy for having EMH here because their lives have completely changed with being able to, do proper documentation and having all their case notes and being able to,
Mm.
you know, actually validate all the time and services that they do with each and every one of their clients so quickly and easily and effectively that they can then turn that extra time and give it back to their clients. And like you said, a lot of them now have time to have their lunch hour, right? Like, and that's important to be able to have that time to just be able to reset yourself and go back in to do what we do. And we didn't have that luxury when it was paper and pen and all the logbooks and all the different paper files and, keeping track of everything and having to secure those things because it's protected information. Now we just click off the screen and walk away. And it's just the amount of time that it's given back to us. When I look back at the beginning, I wish I could have told myself, don't worry, this is going to go so much easier than you think it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun because I hadn't done a ton of implementations. Like I kind of jumped in. There was quite a lot of organizations. Like I'm working with Seven South, and like it is a much easier process than you expect because a lot of it's configurable. We're not starting from a blank slate. We're saying like, what do you need out of these things? Here's what other organizations like you built their system like. Let's make this easier and give recommendations and then get feedback to tweak it. I always remember our chats as like we met once a week for 30 minutes
Mhm.
after doing a bunch of upfront kind of like knowledge sharing and education of kind of the process. And I'd say 15 of those minutes we were just chit-chatting, getting caught up on our weeks.
Yeah.
Like I always felt, I was like, one, you guys always had your work done. And two is like, yeah, let's just keep working through this. And got any questions? I have a couple questions here, and let's make sure that that's translated into the system effectively. Um, but it was super smooth. Like I felt it was smooth, and we you didn't ever show up my house like knocking on my door or anything. Like so, I was like, we're still good. We're still good because typically a large project like this, there's going to be some speed bumps because it touches every part of your organization, and some people might not be up for making those changes.
Mhm.
So it was a ton of fun working with both of you on it, and getting it live, and now seeing some of the impact and kind of doing this revisiting of it. Um, Going into there are a couple questions, and then we'll probably loop back a little bit into kind of the top part. So I'm gonna pop open the first question that's in here. Um, and I am going to read it verbatim, actually. Usually I synthesize, but there is a good lead into this one. On the topic of NIMBY and stigma of having addiction treatment facilities in your community. The truth is, addicts are family members, friends, neighbors, teachers, and other community members. It's easy but untrue to see addicts as the other. Really can impact anybody. Uh, how can we, as individuals, work to shift the perception of treatment centers in our communities, from a negative perception, to a more positive perception, to see the true impact that they're having and how that reverberates to the families of those that are receiving treatment?
I think one of the best terms I ever heard was curious empathy. And I think it's about seeing not the behavior, but what's behind the behavior. And if we all took just a little bit of time and started seeing the person behind the behavior, we would be so much better off as a community. Um, Addicts and alcoholics and anyone struggling with mental health, their intention is not to cause harm. Their intention isn't to cause this kind of chaos or disorderly stuff within the community. They're struggling themselves, and some may not make it into recovery. And I think that's where that curious empathy as a community will really help, because we have to stop seeing the behavior and we have to start seeing the person. And I think that would really help not only the addicts, not only the alcoholics, not only the people struggling with mental health, but the people that love them too.
Yeah, I think that's like there might be chaos surrounding these people. I think that's going to be kind of expected for depending where people are on the spectrum of it. Some people you're never going to know.
Mhm.
And it's the people that you're walking beside on the street or in your family.
Mhm.
Um, and so much of it's they're just trying to survive. We're all trying to survive.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of privileges that we have that we don't even realize because we haven't had the opportunity to interact with people that have less privileges than we do. And there really is no escaping if it is inside your body,
Yeah.
the things that are impacting you most, where it becomes this less visible. Um, and you start to see the ableism and all those things that are coming from this. So I think like kind of hit it on the head. Like, how can we be more empathetic in our day to day for everybody? Not even specific to someone that we know is struggling, but even the people that aren't struggling. Everybody has a struggle somewhere at a magnitude that on for them is not going to. If Kelly, you've got splashed by a giant puddle as someone drove by you, like you're having a pretty crappy day. And I might be used to getting splashed by puddles. So I'm like, yeah, it's kind of normal. Each action is going to have a different reaction on everybody.
Yeah.
And I think having that empathy is really important. And I think is where you as an organization see a lot of success is how do you have empathy so people feel welcomed, they feel part of something, they feel understood.
Yeah, I think it's also about addiction in itself is not the problem. It's the symptom of the problem,
Mhm.
right? And when you can really understand that, it makes everything else so much more simple.
Yeah, it's something so complex becomes more simple, right? As you start to get that understanding. I did have a question. I wasn't sure if we're going to get to it. As you think about um, Ontarians, Canadians, people in the world, if you could shout one thing from the rooftops that would help make people healthier. So that could be on their mental health, that could be their physical health, all of the millions of things that feed into that. What, based on your experience and what you see on a day to day, like what would you want people to know?
There's a lot, actually. I would be screaming up there for a long time. I think it's that it's okay. We see you and it's okay. And we're here when you're ready.
I love that. What about you, Stacey?
Really stole mine. No, I would, yeah, I would absolutely agree. It's okay, there's help, and don't be afraid to ask for it, regardless of who you are, or where you're from, whether you're, that Juno Award winner, or whether you're, just trying to get a job. Anybody in between, just ask. Don't be scared.
Yeah, and to tie back to that question that we got in the Q&A section. So please do put questions in the Q&A section if you have them. I think there's a lot of people that do want to help and that do want to be in your corner that aren't necessarily visible to you with where you're at right now. And I think an organization like Seven South is a good case of that, where people didn't know about you guys for so long. And now that it's becoming more known in the community, like you were always there in people's corner. And I think that's the challenge with the stigma is everyone feels alone. They don't feel like they have people in their corner. And to tie back to that question, how can we be more visible allies that we are willing to invest our time and our efforts to help people get the resources they need and feel like they are not alone in this? Because it's going to take people inside the system and outside of the system to be able to see the change and us to become a more healthy society as a whole and start to see how people can really be, to your point, the best versions of themselves. Because that's where you can see some magic happening for sure.
I think I've always been a true believer. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So like you said, how can you be an ally? And I think one of the big things around education. And if you're well educated and you understand what this is all about, pass that knowledge on to someone that may not. And then they may in turn do the same. And to just show a little bit of empathy and a little bit of kindness for those that are struggling, and to pass on the information when you have it. And then hopefully with that circle that can continue from person to person, it will reach the people that need it the most. And here's the thing, a lot of the people that might be in a judgmental stance today might be the very person that needs the help tomorrow.
Mhm.
And, I'll never forget, I had a story of a woman that came in here and she was of that mindset until she had a son that struggled. And she didn't see the addict, she saw her son. So because she got educated around that, dropped her old biases and all the old belief systems, she was in turn able to be there for her son and break that kind of generational curse. And then her son then can carry on and do that for the next generation and the next. So I think with that as being part of the solution, educate yourself well, have that curious empathy, and pass it on to the next person.
I love it. That's just a snowball effect right there.
It is. And because I come at things from the financial perspective, because we are a nonprofit charitable, we can accept donations all the time, which will allow us to expand our services to reach out to more people. And so when you're looking for donations for whether it's tax season or whatever, keep us in mind too. Every little bit helps us help the next person.
I'm always happy to get a tax receipt.
Exactly. We're always happy to give them out.
Yeah. Exactly. I do want to let anyone else, if you do have a question, like now is a great time to either pop it in the chat, ideally in the Q&A section, because it just gives us an opportunity to either answer it live and still hold it up. But please do pop in some questions if you do have them. And so we'll give folks like a minute or two, and if there aren't a ton of questions, then we'll wrap up a few minutes later so that those people that did not get their lunch can get their lunch. We are a very lunch focused group here, as as we see one come in. So does EMHware help track donations? We don't currently do like traditional donation tracking. The only way that you could utilize the same contracts of the system would be to use, here's your like donor profile, and then you can add on a form that would say, yes, they did all of these things, and then you're good to go. And you can always fill it out as the tax receipt and export it from the system. But it would then be kind of mixed in where you'd be able to mark people as donors, and then that would be in with your regular data set. It would not impact reporting though, which is great. And there is another, Stacey, you are going to be the one that everyone is looking to hear.
All right, good stuff.
When you think about your financial reporting, and I'm going to expand this question a little bit, when you think about your financial reporting and generating grant requests and grant reports, what has been helpful within the EMHware system with those processes?
Well, with my financial reporting to the Ministry of Health, as I said earlier, it provides me with the data extremely quickly. And it's not just guessing data, it's actually, fact-based. We can roll it up and get those actual numbers. Granted, it's so much easier to go to, a donor or a grant provider and say, we have helped X number of people. They stayed specifically this length of time. This is the success rate of people who graduated. Prior to EMHware, it was like, I think we've got like 12 guys that came through, about half of them graduated, and you just kind of felt like a fake going to these people and promoting your business on not specific, evidence-based data. Now we have that, and I can confidently go to somebody and say, if you want further information on that, I can provide it for you. In a click of a button, there it is. So it time saves, and to me, it's detailed reports with really truthful data that I have no problem backing up.
Yeah, I think it's funny because my wife writes a lot of grants, and she was saying she's waiting for someone. I'm like, I guess you're guessing on it.
Yeah.
And it's hard because if you don't guess the same way in 6 months when you have to report on it, like that's where you can get into some hot water.
Exactly. If you're going to make things up, you've got to document it really, really well, because you've got to say the same thing over and over. Now
At
I
least
don't. I just go into the
directional.
image where it's there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You get the directional, if it's
Yeah.
the same methodology, at least it's directionally accurate.
Exactly.
But I think that's really important to be able to say like this is the actual impact. Also opens up a lot of doors for you.
Yeah.
And when you think about who are your main funders? Because I think that's helpful for people to know as they think through like, are they very complex? Are they, so walk us through your main funders.
So our main funders are 75% of our funding comes from Ontario Health, which has crazy amounts of reporting, and our other one is Correctional Services Canada, so that's federal. So we have provincial and federal. Federally, the reporting is not as involved. They have a per diem rate, so it's just very rolls out, as opposed to Ontario Health, who they provide us with just a budget. And so we have to sort of answer to how we spent that budget and justify needing more money or justifying the amounts they give us. So yeah, so that's why the reporting and the statistics become very important.
And within those, if you think about the Ontario reporting, because it is so complex, and like some of them are even like more complex where they're in and out of service, and it's like there's a lot of rule sets.
Absolutely.
When you think about even just showing the amount of work being done, like has it been easy to break out your contact and direct client care versus your administrative tasks?
Yes, it's extremely easy now. Just a quick story, pre-EMHware, it would be that sort of guesstimate numbers of how many individuals we're speaking to and how many interactions we have. Kelly and I had a meeting within the last 6 months where they were asking us, why have your interactions gone up so much? And Kelly and I were like, they haven't gone up so much. This is just what we've always been doing. But your reporting
Yeah.
has never been this significant. The numbers have never been this high. And Kelly and I said, because we've never tracked them as well as we are now. We have the new client management system, we're tracking them. And they were just blown away. They're like, that's what you guys have been doing all along. We didn't know this. And so Kelly and I are hopeful that increased funding will result because they can now actually see what we're doing. So
Yeah, that's like,
yeah.
now you're going like, oh, that's why everyone said they were so busy all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah.
makes sense. I
Yeah.
just have a
So it's the
question.
opposite. They think we're making it up now when we're being accurate and vice versa. So yeah, it's good to be able to back it up.
And I'm not gonna lie, like we've seen that in a number of organizations. We're like, okay, we'll look back through your data with you, like just to double check. But I'm like,
Yeah.
this is all data you entered,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's all pre-configured to your program codes and everything. Like
Mhm.
it should be like just pulling a pre-named report that is clear that this is your
Yeah,
OHRS report for this.
exactly.
Um, so there, another question did pop in. What do you consider as success for an agency like yours, and how do you track it?
Success, oh, yeah, okay, so success to me is if the client is happy. So everybody has their own goals. And as much as I would love to say that success is, somebody's clean and sober for the next 20 years and they have improvements in all these areas of their life.
Mhm.
Obviously, that's a wonderful success story. But the thing is, when the guys graduate and they're better leaving than they did coming, and that having that hope reinstalled in their life, that they have an opportunity to continue doing tomorrow what they did today, that speaks volumes in success. Because if they have just that hope and that motivation that they can continue feeling better each and every day, then why would you give that up? Right? And
Yeah.
a good portion of them don't. They just keep running with it. And we have these beautiful phone calls that come back or visits where we get to, have that joy in watching how their lives have unfolded. But I think it's just, that hope is reinstalled as
That's
success.
huge. That's huge. The you crack the door open and people can open it if they so want to, and they have the tools to do that. And I think even within EMH, where like great way to send a form through the client portal to be able to capture that information,
Yeah.
where then it goes back into the client record and you can see like what did work for them if they
Mhm.
do end up coming back into service. We're not
Yeah,
starting from scratch. We can continue to push the door further and further open and
exactly.
build on the previous successes. That's huge.
Yeah, because a lot of people would see somebody returning to treatment as like a failure, but it's not because they're still alive. And that's
Yes.
the thing. So when they came through the first time, they got enough information and enough hope to make it through to their next visit. And hopefully this one will be the one, like you said, opens the door enough that they don't have to return. But because we have all the information, we know where to start. We know, like you said, we know what works for them. We have all their data, we have all their file, and we can just continue opening that door further and further until they don't need to come back here to live. They just come back here to visit, right?
Yeah,
Show us all the wonderful things.
that's awesome. How about for yourself, Stacey?
I think Kelly captured it. I can't, there's not, I mean, success is just the fact that they have a better life. I mean, the one client that sticks out to me and really empowers our new vision is a client that I interviewed to bring him in 20 years ago now. And he told me after the fact that if I had have refused him to come into treatment, if for some reason he didn't meet our criteria, he was going to go jump off a bridge in Toronto. That was his reality. He came through our program. He was successful because he graduated. That was his success. And he has gone on to get a ticket. He's a licensed plumber now. He has a family. He called just last week to say thank you. I've just celebrated 20 years from graduating and I have not picked up since. That's the epitome of success. But that shows you how vulnerable the people are that we work with on day one. That my decision had that significant impact. And it plays in my mind a lot, because I think if I had turned him away, how different his life would have been.
Mhm.
So to me, you hear those stories and that's success.
Yeah,
So,
and to just on that measurement piece, like how do you measure it? It's like, how do you measure magic?
yeah,
Like it sounds so cheesy, but it's also like
yeah,
it's intangible, the impact that you just had on someone's life.
yeah.
And a lot of people have come through your doors.
Mhm.
How do you measure that? And I think that's something that people need to, and I hope with some of the technology changes that it's easier to start pulling sentiment analysis from data sets and those pieces to be able to better measure the magic.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and I think you did touch on some of the quantitative metrics,
Mhm.
but a lot of it's qualitative. And I think that's where being able to pull and get comments and get some of that feedback from people is so important and can be facilitated in a lot of ways, but
Mhm.
you need to be able to store it to be able to pull it together and into that really powerful narrative to be able to get more funding to have an even larger impact in the future.
Exactly.
Um, Knowing that we're about 2 minutes to the end and we have answered the questions that are in the queue, I think it's a perfect time for us to wrap up so folks have a few minutes for a bio break before their next meeting. So I do want to, for both you, Kelly, and you, Stacey, thank you so much for being so open with us, sharing the wins, sharing the challenges, and most of all, sharing the stories of how you're truly impacting your communities and getting to see that snowball effect with having someone that is a trade and they have family now and they're to continue to live to benefit from the legacy and expand that legacy further. So big thank you to both of you for joining us today, and thank you to everybody else that carved out the hour to join us as well.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day, everyone.
You do. Take care.